All right, I'm here with Chris Woods, former defensive coordinator of the Dallas Renegades. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Mark, great. Appreciate you having me.
Sure. So every guest that I always have on, I always ask them the superhero origin story. How did you get from high school kid all the way to being a coach in the pro levels?
Uh, Man, it's getting so long ago. That list is getting long. I grew up just outside of Boston, town called Milton, first town south of the city. My high school was actually in the city. I was one of those guys. I have three sisters, older sisters. They all stayed relatively close. When they went to college, they all still live within about 15 minutes of where we grew up. I was just different. I wanted to get as far away as I could and kind of spread my wings. So I went to Davidson College in North Carolina, where Steph Curry went.
Uh-huh.
Although he would say that's where I went, I think. And it was a great experience. I love the school, love the spot, but I think I'd probably get that from my dad. And my dad's off the boat from Ireland. He came over
Oh, hey.
when, I think he was in his early 30s. So
What part of Ireland, by the way?
Cork.
Hey, that's where my family is. I
There you
am
go.
97% Irish, and most of it's from County Cork.
Okay, good. Yeah.
My grandfather.
He was the only one that came over. His whole family is still over there. So cousins, uncles, and aunts on that side are still in the old country, and my mother's parents are actually off the boat from Italy. So, so I have a temper, and I like to drink and eat. So
there you go.
But so anyway, I when I finished up playing at Davidson, I didn't actually get into coaching right away. I went to work in the business world in Atlanta. I lived there for maybe 2.5 years. I was selling, some insurances, some financial products. I was doing fine, but it just didn't give me a jolt. I didn't. It just wasn't for me. And I remember a number of my friends were coaching at the time, and the coaches convention came into Atlanta that one of the years I was there, and it was, my office was a few buildings away from the Marriott Marquis downtown, and so I kind of blew off work for 3 days and just went and hung out with them and lived the football coach life. And I remember coming out of there saying, man, that's what I want to do. So I went to the next, it took about a year, but I went to the next year's convention with the thought of trying to find a job. And I did. I got hired at Plymouth State College in New Hampshire, a little Division III school for Don Brown, who's the DC at Arizona now. He was at Michigan for a number of years. Really good coach, really good defensive coach. He hired me for, I think I made $1,500 that first year.
Oh, wow.
About, the whole staff, we all split a house. It was cheap to live in upstate New Hampshire, but still, we were working full time. It's not like we were coming in at 3 and going home at 5. We were acting as full-time coaches, but making $1,500 and, just trying to find ways to make ends meet. We go work at the ski resorts and just, do odd jobs, but it was having a blast. And, my mom was very intuitive because she knew I wasn't real happy in the business world. And I was almost, I wasn't afraid, but I didn't know how they were going to take it when I told them that's what I want to do. Cause I was taking, $30,000-$40,000 cut and pay at that time to go do it. And she couldn't have been happier because she knew that's what I wanted to do. And I kind of stayed with it from there. And, the second year I got a whopping, I think $3,500 pay raise. So I was up to $5,000. I was living in high cotton, and then, kind of bounced around. So I came up a different, a guy here just asked me, he was asking me a question this morning. Hey, when you GA, did you? I said, well, I never GA. I kind of came up a different way. I got in on the D3 level, which you sort of are a GA because you don't have any support staff. So you're doing a lot of the GA stuff, but you're also coaching.
So what's a GA?
Sorry, graduate assistant.
Okay.
The guys at I'm at Kansas now. The guys that are just kind of getting going, they're taking graduate classes and sort of being, I don't want to say grunt work or menial labor, but they're a lot of the dirty work of film input and data entry and that stuff falls to them. So it can be a thankless life, but I never did. I never really experienced that purely as a graduate assistant. So I kind of started right away on coaching and working my way up. But from Plymouth State, I went to Wittenberg in Ohio. And then from there, I was there 4 years. It was another D3 job, but that was an actual, paying benefits full-time job. So, again, I had arrived making 23,000 a year. But it was fun. I worked for a great guy. I think we were like 40-4 in the 4 years I was there. So
Wow.
program. And then I went up to the Division II level in Pennsylvania at Mansfield, which was the opposite end of the coin. And it's amazing what I learned right away is, so I got into it and we were 19 and I think we were 19 or 20 and 2 in the 2 years I was at Plymouth State. And then we were, I think I just said 40-4 at Wittenberg. So you kind of start thinking that it's you, that you've got it all figured out. And, you're the reason that they're winning. Never mind Wittenberg had won 600 games prior to that. So, and then I went to Mansfield, which was historically a downtrodden Division II program. And, we went from being one of the best defenses in the country at Wittenberg to giving up 500 yards in the first game at Mansfield. I got really dumb really fast when I crossed that state line. But, what I kind of learned early on is it's about players. I mean, coaching matters. But it's more really about, finding out what guys can do and putting them in the right position and then trying to stay out of their way. It's more about eliminating yourself from the equation is kind of how I look at it. I like scheming. I like having plans and everything, but when it push comes to shove, you got to think players and not plays and let your good players put them in the right spot and then just let them go make a play for you. So, we worked. I was at Mansfield for 4 years, and while I was there, I was 3 years as 1 year as the coordinator. Then that head coach left, and when I forget where he went, he was on there about 8 months, and I got promoted to head coach. So I hadn't been coaching a real long time, and there I am being a head coach, Division II program, scholarship Division II in a good league in the Pennsylvania league. And so I had a great staff. We worked 3 years. We kind of turned that program around in 3 years, got them to the top 20, went 8-3 our last year there, which they hadn't had a winning season since World War II. Had won 6 games in the previous 6 or 7 years. So we had really hard to do that and just had really good kids and a good staff that worked hard. And then after that, I went back home, so to speak, to Boston, and I took another D2 head coaching job at Stonehill, which is just a little further south of the city. And then after that, I got my first crack into Division I. I went to Harvard as the special teams coordinator, linebacker coach. That was a great experience. So, those Ivy League guys are fun to coach, very smart and together guys. I kind of bounced around quite a bit. Harvard, Bryant, which was an FCS program in the area, New England. Then I went to Columbia for just one season. Unfortunately, after 8 months, I think it was there 8 months, the head coach got relieved. And as usually happens when he goes, everybody goes. Mm-hmm. And so that happened to me too. And it was just one of those things, as I had a family by now and 2 kids, and you can't go back and take a $1,500 job at that point. You have responsibilities. So it was hard just to find something suitable. So I went from Ivy League coaching in New York City to coaching Mississippi junior college football.
Oh, wow.
Span of, 24 hours. And
wow.
And that was a heck of an experience. I'm going to say that I'm probably the only guy in the country that can make that claim to have coached those 2 levels within the span of a week. And,
wow.
And it was cool, because I'm obviously a Northeast guy. I had never really spent a whole lot of time in the deep South, and all of a sudden I'm in it. We were in the poorest county in Mississippi, which probably makes it the poorest county in the country. Mm-hmm. Just it was good to see. It was good to see that side of things and understand that people are people, and found a way to relate to those kids, mainly by being genuine. I don't really try to pretend to be something I'm not. I'm not going to go in there and throw around a bunch of y'alls and stuff and act like I know anything about soul food. So it was good. I was there. I ended up spending 3 years there, and it may be one of the more rewarding things I've ever done, because I'm not sure that any job that I've had before or since, you feel like you're impacting people and players as you could. I mean, you're literally changing trajectory of some of these guys' lives, by giving them a chance to get a degree or smooth out some rough edges they may have, and then turn them on. And at times it was heartbreaking, to be honest with you, because some guys just wouldn't do it. They just wouldn't follow the prescription that you were laying out for whatever reason. They thought you were picking on them, and you really weren't. So from there, that's where I kind of had the stroke of luck. While I was there 3 years, while I was there, a friend of mine was working for Bob at OU, Bob Stoops at OU. And it was probably about, 5.5 hour drive from where I was to Norman, Oklahoma. So I used that opportunity. I went up and, I'd visit with them a couple times, went up to talk some defense. I worked their camp 2 or 3 years in a row while I was there. Just kind of got up around them and got to know them. You got to know Bob a little bit, really got to know Mike, Bob's brother, quite a bit. And so that when my buddy moved on, it was kind of an easy transition to kind of get your foot in the door and get a chance to go there. And I'll never forget that call. So I think I was actually going out to mow the lawn and paint the field at the junior college when Bob called on the cell phone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you couldn't. He offered the job, and you couldn't spit out yes fast enough.
Right.
So I went there, and I was there for I was there for Bob's last 2 years as a head coach in college at OU, and then Lincoln Riley's first year I stayed on, which was we had a great run, two college football playoffs and a New Year's Six bowl. I think we won two or three, two at least. Big 12 championships. So doing really well. Saw a lot of really good players. Baker was our quarterback, the Baker Mayfield the first year, and Kyler Murray was after him. And so you're around some really, really good players. I mean, I was there the night that Baker and Patrick Mahomes had that. It was ridiculous. As a defensive coach, I still want to throw up. Mahomes threw for about 700 and Baker threw for like 600, and it was crazy. Now, we're fortunate to walk out of there with a win. But after that, I was in an off the field role for Bob, kind of an analyst. It was a good role because I had input, and, was the only one there. So, Mike and I were working hard to put things together, or I should say, help put things together with him. But I really feel like my strengths are as a coach, wanted to be on the field, putting your name on something. So I had a chance to go from there to Texas State, which is in the Sun Belt down in San Marcos, Texas. They needed a coordinator. I didn't know anybody down there, but I knew, it's like in coaching, somebody that knows somebody, and made a call and got me in the door. And so I went down there and sometimes sometimes you hit it good in coaching and sometimes you don't. And the older you get in coaching, you do understand that, I'm not trying to knock anybody, but there is some luck involved and just timing and who and it's, just because you coach at a certain level doesn't mean you're a great coach or any better than a guy coaching at the D3 level. And I really believe that. So I went in and, felt like we needed to fix some things. We did. I mean, we had a great 2018 season. We were arguably the most improved defense in FBS football in 1 year. I mean, we had a great group of guys that embraced everything we wanted to do. They were really smart. They could handle a lot of things, improved just across the board dramatically. Unfortunately, we weren't so good on offense, and you can only do so much on one side of the ball. And,
right.
But they decided to make a change again. So I'm at another school for 8 months, and the school makes a change. They actually made a change after the last game, or the second last game of the year. They let him go, and I actually was named interim head coach for one game, just to kind of get him through. I would have liked to have had a chance to interview for the job, but again, I'm a realist and I kind of know how that stuff goes, and knew I wasn't a legitimate candidate. But those kids, we owed it to them to try to keep it together and give them a good, good last week there. So that was, they made a change, and I went from there to actually Kansas when Les Miles first got here, and I was here. It was in the middle of spring ball when I can vividly remember going into walking in the room, and one of the other guys said, "Hey, how about Coach Stoops?" And I'm really not one. I don't like surf the internet, and I'm not into that stuff, like chasing jobs and those things. And my first reaction was, "What about him?" I don't know what's on. He goes, "The XFL," and I knew about the XFL coming out. And my first reaction, to be honest with you, was like, no way,
Oh,
no way he's doing that. And they said, no, it said it. I said, I'll be right back. And I walked out the door. When I walked out the door and I dialed Bob's number, and Bob picked up. He said, Chris, good to tell. I was just about to call you. So
wow.
I kind of got the ball rolling, and I went down. I mean, there was never a question that I was going to go do it with him. I hold him in such high esteem. It was just what was the role going to be, and I really wanted to be his coordinator. So we went down. We met a couple of times. I drove down to Norman, back down there. And, I remember we met in his suite at the stadium one time. I brought some video. We were just talking through some stuff. And then he and this guy named Matty McMillan, who's Bob's right-hand guy, he was our director of football ops with the Renegades. And he and Bob have been together since K-State days, way back in the day. Great friends. And I know Matty very well. We just went to lunch just to kind of catch up. And that was it. And then, Bob made the decision to give me a chance. And I am grateful for that because, he's Bob Stoops. He had everybody and anybody calling him, trying to get into the league. And he had some heavy hitter names, but he's still, I'm grateful that he made the decision to allow me to run the defense. So that was back in April. I think I'm the first guy they hired. I'm pretty sure I'm the first assistant coach that got hired. I got hired before some of the head coaches, if I remember right. So I kind of saw the whole thing get put together. And really from the time I was hired in April, I did come back to Kansas to help them finish out the spring because I didn't want to leave them in the lurch. But, as soon as the spring game ended, I was hightailing it out of here to kind of start those preps. So really it was just helping with the hiring process, names and being part of the interview process for the defensive coaches. And then once we got those guys settled, it was putting together our draft plan. And then working with our player personnel guys about what we wanted. And they were great guys to work with and they had a say, but we were intimately involved in the draft process as well, which I thought was cool, and I could really see where, we weren't the NFL, but a lot of my preparations for the draft was to call guys that I knew that were in the scouting business in the NFL just to kind of compare notes and maybe get some ideas and how they were looking for things. And you can really see how a franchise can go off the rails if there's a disconnect between the front office personnel and the coaches. And,
really?
Yeah. And I know guys have said that. I think it was Bill Parcells one time, they were interviewing him and he had left. I think it was when he left the Patriots. And he made a comment about, you got to cook the meal. They should at least let you shop for some of the groceries.
Oh, do you remember that? Yeah.
I think he was a little upset that they might have been doing some, trades and bringing guys in that he was such a huge believer in locker room culture. He wanted his guys. And then all of a sudden you just start dropping guys in there. He didn't want to be a part of that. So I thought that was a plus for the XFL is that we were so involved in it of helping pick the guys. I guess the bad part is if it didn't work out, you couldn't blame anybody else.
Yeah, that's true.
It was your fault. But so that's it's kind of long-winded, but that's how I went from little Davidson College to coaching in the XFL.
No, you mentioned Patrick Mahomes, seeing him play. Did you think that you were like, yep, this guy's going to be an NFL MVP one day? Or you were just like, he had a good game?
I mean, listen, I don't sweat that dude. I'm 2-0 against him. Twice, we beat him twice. No, I vividly remember, he was young the first time, we were younger, and they came to Norman and we were pretty good on defense. And so we didn't really have much trouble with them, but it wasn't him. It was just the supporting cast. We were just able to stay on top of them. But that year it was a night game. And Mike called it. We threw everything we had in the playbook at him. It didn't matter. The craziest stat from that game was and I say it was like him. He was like 18 of 20 on 3rd and long. And
wow.
I tell people, I don't know what's more amazing, that we got them in 20 3rd and longs or that he converted 18 of them. I mean, it was just insane. It was one of those nights he just could not get off the field because he was making every throw. And so I vividly remember watching, I like to just go out pregame. I like to get out of the locker room and just go walk around the field, and I'm not really doing anything. Like, I'm not out there to scout people, but he was just out there messing around, whipping the ball around. And I'm watching him make some of these circus throws, roll out to the left and whip it back to the right. And it was going 60 yards on a line to the pylon. And I'm just watching him one after the other after the other. Like, this dude, I mean, this just physically skilled. I mean, that's just a different guy right there. Could you project that he was going to be that good? I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't go that far, but I vividly remember thinking, oof, when he had good size to him, like, we might be in a little bit of trouble.
Wow. So transitioning from the college game to this kind of XFL game, what was that like going as the league started to build up? You started to have camps and then getting into that season. It was there because I never coached in the NFL. I never coached that level. I mean, I've coached good players, but it is a different animal. Most of the guys we ended up drafting were, usually coming off NFL rosters, the last cut guys, or we had one guy that joined us late, Rashard Clayette. He was in the playoffs. He was on the 53-man roster for the Vikings, and we drafted the rights to him, and he was coming to us as soon as their season ended. They kept winning, so they made. It actually hurt him because it hurt him for us. It didn't hurt him for his pocketbook or anything. He's a great, but they went 2 rounds, I think, into the playoffs. So that was 2 more weeks that he's not with us. We actually got him the night before our last scrimmage against St. Louis in Houston. And I remember sitting up with him. We took like 2 hours. It was a scrimmage. We weren't really going to do anything on defense and put anything out there. So we spent 2 hours. I'm just trying to teach him those 2 calls. And he went out and, like, his 3rd play ever, he goes out there and crushes some guys. Like, okay, I'm good. We've seen enough. So really good players. But I never coached. I had some. There's just enough nuances different in the game. For field spacing in college, you get used to. The hashes are different. So in college, there's a wide side of the field and there's a short side of the field. And then that really means a lot to how you have to set up your defense and how you call the game. In the NFL, that doesn't exist. The ball's for what we would consider in college, the ball's in the middle of the field all the time. So the same amount of space is on either side. And I to be honest with you, I really wasn't sure how that was going to work out. It helped because we didn't have to work on certain components of our defense, but it made it harder to call to do certain things. But by and large, I really felt it helped us on defense because of this. College, sometimes, especially here in the Big 12, it feels like the field is 100 miles wide. They can spread you out. They can't really do that in the NFL. So that was about it. But what I kind of figured out pretty quick is football's football. Everybody's doing the same stuff, whether it's pro or Pop Warner. And the thing that was cool is these guys that we drafted, and we did. It wasn't by luck. I mean, we did some research on guys that we wanted smart football players, guys that had what we would call football intelligence. They didn't have to be rocket scientists, but they needed to exhibit an ability to process football concepts. So that we did place a premium on that stuff, and we were fortunate that we did it right. We had a lot of guys that were really smart that could pick up a lot of what we wanted to do very, very quickly. I remember Deron Smith, who was one of the smarter players I've ever coached. Coming off the December camp, I said, when in our first meeting, I said, listen, we obviously have to evaluate you as players, but honestly, we don't have any pads on, so it's going to be hard to really evaluate your playing ability. I'm looking at this thing as more of a mental gymnastics game. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to try to break your brain, all of you. I'm going to try to put in as so much stuff. I just want to see where your limit is. Players and coaches. I never worked with any of the coaches. Obviously never coached any of the players. I needed to kind of find out where their limit was. And there was at one point later in December camp when we were still in Arlington, and Duran and I were just talking. He goes, he's like, I can't believe how many calls we have in just like 9 days. And somehow it just all kind of seems to work, because everybody had a part and they just kind of did their part of it. But those guys could really process quite a bit. And so that helped us. We were able to do a lot of stuff. But,
the only real difference to me, that and frankly, I probably could have done a better job of, and would do a better job of. And it wasn't terrible, but it just seems like in the pro game, it's just, you're just managing personalities more, and not that that's not, it's becoming more prevalent in college. And this, name, image, and likeness stuff that they're going through is
Yeah.
really turn it into a lot of individualized, what's in it for me kind of stuff. But those guys were there to do a job. The guys in the XFL, and a lot of them rightly so saw it as their first, best, and maybe last opportunity to keep playing professionally and get paid to do it. So it was their job, and they were very serious about it. They treated it. So it helped me you had to be sharp. I mean, you couldn't go in there and waste their time. And if you wasted their time, they would let you know about it. And we try to treat our guys very well. I pride myself on being an organized person, and not doing that. So, but the thing I had to caution myself against was, okay, I told those guys the walkthrough would end at 3:30, and I'm the kind of guy that's going to be, hey, let's get a couple more plays, and let's go to 3:35, 3:40, 3:30. It was over, and couldn't be efficient and get it done. Then that was on me. I needed to be more efficient of how I planned it. But and I don't say like they weren't controlling it. We didn't have a bunch of bad guys, but we did want to be very conscious about not monopolizing their time, because these were adults. Some of them had families to go to. They all had other obligations that they needed to go take care of. So there was that piece of it, and then it was just the personality part of it. Those guys all wanted to play. They needed to have film. Everybody to have film to go on, and sometimes maybe the rotations weren't communicated as well as they could have been, or sometimes it just happens in the middle of a game. You're going to ride the hot hand, and in a way, sometimes I think our strength, specifically to us as a defense, is I feel like we drafted really well, and I thought we had a lot of really good players that fit our scheme. They might not have been the best players in the league, but they were really good for us. And they could all really go out there. Like, we felt like it wasn't college, you're not 40, but we felt like we could come at you in two waves and really not lose a whole lot, subbing guys out. So we made a conscious decision, knowing that it was a short roster anyway. In the XFL, we only had 21 guys on defense. And it's a long season, that we're going to make a concerted effort to play a lot of guys and just try to keep them healthy. So again, I don't think we made a mistake with the decision. Maybe we could have rolled it out a little bit better of explaining how it was going to go. And really, guys weren't complaining about how much they were playing. Sometimes it was more about just the flow of the game. Like they would get their couple series and then not be in for a while. They just felt like they were getting out of the flow of the game. And listen, I totally get that. When they're adults, we're adults. As long as you do it respectfully, I have no problem ever listening to a player's concerns. And so we would try to hash it out. Sometimes we try to accommodate them, and sometimes we could. But we tell them that. And that was really the biggest difference to me. Is you were just dealing with a different animal. They weren't college kids. They were grown people.
Right. Who were some of the players that really stood out to you during that season that you were like, wow, these guys, I'm surprised they're here. They're not in the NFL types.
Yeah, there were a lot. I could sort of see in everybody, me included, why we're all there. There's always something, but the other thing I did learn, and this is not just our team, but you saw there's a lot of good players in the league. It's a business, and there were some decisions that are financially made in the NFL. You have a value based on your roster spot, and if that dollar figure, kind of exceeds your value, they're just going to cut you. So you're a much better player, but they're going to make a decision, go with a younger guy because of the roster and salary caps.
Mm-hmm.
I think guys understood that, and we had some guys that were in that situation that you kind of shook your head. And the guy I mentioned, Richard, was he had been kind of a journeyman. He'd been on a lot of teams and just came off a playoff was on the 53-man roster in a playoff team. And then, as soon as the season ends, he's at the XFL. Why isn't he staying up there?
Mm.
Because he had been in it for enough years. And, you get to the point where you can't be on the practice squad anymore. And then if we're going to keep you, we have to pay you X amount of dollars, and we don't want to do that. We'd rather go draft, and we feel like we can get at least close to the value in a draft. I mean, this is a guy, Rashard, who's 240, ran like a 4.4. I mean, he was a freakishly good athlete, and he'd be one you just look at, just physically you look at him, you'd be like, I don't get it. Like, what am I missing? But then you talk to him, and he kind of explained, and he wasn't sore about it. He got it, that it was that was the business. But he was one. I don't know, like I mentioned, Duran
Mm-hmm.
spent time in camps, and AAF was a great player. XFL was a great player. I don't know. I get it. I mean, I could get why maybe some guys would say, you can probably find a prettier looking guy, a taller guy, a little faster, but you're not going to find anybody smarter or that's going to come up with the play when you need it, as good as he could. So, you just got to find the right fit and somebody that believes in you. I mean, there were so many guys ask me these questions all the time, and I always feel like I slight guys because, there was really nobody that we ended up with on defense that you kind of you get some buyer's remorse, like I wish we could have done that a little bit differently. They were all great. I mean, they were all great to work with. Some of the guys we had to let go, we didn't want to let them go, but you had to, because you had to make your decision. And sometimes that works out, and sometimes it doesn't. A couple of those guys get snapped right up and ended up having pretty decent years for other teams. So, I don't know. They all stood out. The guy always. People ask, who is one of your favorite players? Frank Alexander was one of my favorites because of how he went about his business. But Frank was another story. He's kind of he was on the tail end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Had been in the league, playing really well in the league, had some issues that I'm not going to get into that kind of got him out of the league, and he was looking at it as just a chance to play more ball. And the way that Frank went about his business, always a smile, always a yes sir, no sir, try to do whatever he could do to win. Just had fun playing the game because, the older you get, you kind of, I know coaches tell you all the time, and when you're a kid, you go, yeah, whatever, coach.
Right.
When you start getting toward the end of it, and you see the finish line, you start appreciating every chance to play the game. And I just the way he did everything for us, and was a really good player for us. It's not like he was a mascot. I mean, he was out there playing really good. Just how he did it every day was incredible. Gray Scales, I think, is with the Steelers still. He was. Greer Martini is one of my favorites. Greer was just kind of an old school throwback guy, really smart, tough, gritty, better than the sum of his parts. Not a great. He's not gonna wow you at the combine. Sorry, Greer, if you're watching this. But fantastic football player. There's a difference between a football player and a track athlete.
Right.
Much better on the field than they are in the combine.
Right.
And we tried to find the balance. I mean, you need guys' physical attributes do matter, but the football ability is going to trump everything.
Yeah. So then you had the season. We all know kind of how it ended. And then, I mean, we were all in shock of all that stuff. And then come August or whatever, you hear about The Rock, Danny Garcia, and Redbird Capital. What was your reaction? Did you talk to other people's reaction to their taking over the XFL?
I did, I mean, there was obvious, as you can imagine, was just a ton of speculation during the whole, from the time they declared bankruptcy through the purchase. And, there were some names floated around. Everybody kind of had their horse that they were pinning. And of course, everybody was sure, a guy of a guy whose sister's boyfriend told him it's this one. So everybody, I never really get into that. The one that seemed plausible to me was, a company that everybody would realize it made sense because they have enough money to do it, but it ended up being them. And it was The Rock and Danny Garcia and Redbird. Obviously, The Rock. Everybody knows The Rock. They know who he is. I really didn't know a whole lot about Danny. It doesn't take long to just, do a real quick research to say she's pretty together. She's a mover and a shaker that comes across very quickly. Didn't really know anything about Redbird, but again, it's kind of the same thing. You looked up them and you saw what they were involved in and who was behind them. So, I thought it was, I just thought it was good. I thought it was a good deal because I felt like the league, if you just had the right people with vision that wanted to continue it and enhance it, and I'm not telling anybody what to do, but to try to, capitalize on the momentum. I do think we had some momentum, unfortunately, when everything happened, and tweak it in your own way. I thought it, really has a chance of success. So it seemed to me like they had the right mix of people with the sales ability, the marketability, the visibility, and the financial backing, which is so important. It seemed like all that stuff is there. So I'm kind of like everybody else. I don't have a whole lot of inside information beyond couple emails, couple phone calls here and there, but I'm just hoping like everybody else that it comes back. Well, more so, I feel badly because there's really, I don't want to say a generation, but there's like a class or two worth of players that, the clock ticks fast in the NFL and in that league. And, we certainly, most guys, I don't have illusions that anybody was in the XFL. That was the destination. Certain guys, they knew it was the end, but I think most guys were in there to try to get some film and see if they could get on an NFL roster. And unfortunately for them and for guys with the showcases and, just being in camps and having any way to get tape, I still get hit up all the time by guys. I'm like, guys, I don't have a lot of information for you as far as like when it's going to start up. I have no idea. Nobody's asked me to be part of it. I don't know. I'll certainly keep you in mind and pass on information as it comes. But it's more just, I just feel bad because there's guys that are dying to keep playing football. And the XFL was such a great avenue to do that. Without that not being there, that hurts them. And then COVID hurt them by eliminating some of the OTAs, just every way that a young guy that didn't get drafted has a chance to get on a roster some way, they all kind of disintegrated at the same time. And there's so many guys that are just sitting around. I do what I can and just tell them, hey, just try to stay in shape and see what happens. But sad.
Yeah. I mean, it's been quite a roller coaster for everybody involved. And then now all of a sudden you have this XFL, CFL talks going on. And like, what was your reaction when you heard that piece?
It was really surprising, to be honest with you. I mean, that blurb came across and I did not see, or, there wasn't any smoke about that one coming out, and then it was there. I thought when you step back, I mean, it was kind of exciting, more of an established league, and but nobody knew what the talks were about. Are they just brainstorming? Is it a merger talk? I mean, still nobody knows, and we'll never know. But I think probably to me it seems like, and again, I'm just spitballing here. It just seems like it would be hard that, you have on one end, you have the XFL, which is Redbird and Danny Garcia and The Rock. But for all intents and purposes, one entity. And on the other end, you have 10 people that you need to try to get to agree on something. And that's really hard to get 10 or however many, 10 CFL teams?
Well, there's 9 teams and then you got the commissioner too.
Yeah. So it's 10. I mean, you got to get 10 people to agree on something. And you can't agree to where to go to breakfast, never mind, merge a league. So
right.
Again, my gut feeling is there was probably more interest on the part of some of the teams in the CFL than on some of the others. And at the end of the day, it just became, the bridge too far to get everybody to agree on something, because there were just so many questions. Okay, well, are we doing 3 downs? You can do 4 downs. Is it going to be like Major League Baseball, and you only do that when you go to Canada? I mean, that would be almost impossible to me to try to learn those rules in a week, like the designated hitter rule.
Yeah.
When you go play the crossover games, I didn't think that was feasible. So I don't know. I mean, I'm all for giving the offense 1 down and then getting the hell off the field or then punt it. But I don't know. It was exciting for a while. We'll see what happens. But what I did like was the expanse of the thinking. Not like let's really try to push this thing forward. And even in their release when they announced the talks were going to stop. They did mention that thing about international. And that one word kind of makes you go.
Yeah. And that was certainly placed there on purpose for sure.
Yeah. I don't think those people do anything with
Yeah.
anything out there.
So now all of a sudden, now you have that whole ending, and now things seems the semi-pro spring league seem to be cropping up. You have the USFL, the XFL is talking coming back in 2023. So where is somebody like you who's coached, bounced around, did the pro thing in the college game? Like, what are your thoughts on like the USFL, for example, coming back and doing its thing? How Mummy did good, former, the offensive coordinator for Dallas. He did good in the spring league. And so what's your kind of take on that league coming up along with the XFL?
Yeah. Quite honestly, for me being an XFL, I'm not an XFL employee anymore, but I was, and I do have affinity for and some semblance of loyalty to the league. It was a little troubling to me, to be quite honest with you, because, the longer you put it off, I really do feel like we had momentum coming off the first season. And if we could have just got through this pandemic thing and come back, then, capitalize before, everybody's got a lot of interest and there's a lot of things pulling on people, and they'll only stick with you for so long with no product out there. So I was, I guess a little concerned, like, okay, there's a vacuum now, and then, somebody's going to get in the vacuum. Do they start stealing some of that momentum and thunder you had? But that being said, there's certainly enough players out there that you can put together good football. One of the things that was interesting to me when during the run up is, a lot of the WWE media people were very involved when we were in Houston. Like we saw a lot of them because they were, obviously doing the mock games and things and at the stadium, but a few of them would be some of them were staying at our hotel. And so I got to know some of those guys pretty well. And some of them were like high up in the WWE. They were lending their expertise about the media end of things. And the one guy, he said to me when we were having a conversation, he said, "Listen, Coach," he's like, I know you guys want people in the stands. That's, you don't want to play in front of nobody, and that's important. And, the gate receipts are going to be important in attendance. There's nothing to do with it. It's all about ratings. That's the only thing that matters is the ratings. So they were more interested in just trying to make sure that product was good for the TV. And that kind of stuck with me because I thought it was, I knew ratings were important, but hey, you got to get people in the stands. You got to sell hot dogs and those things. And
right.
That has such little to do with it.
Interesting.
And so that being said, I know I'm biased, but I just, I really thought the production of the XFL was incredible. It seemed like it didn't seem, put together with Scotch tape at all. You got Joel Klatt was doing games and great crews there. I thought the production values were incredible. It just looked good. And, you never know until the first one. We actually didn't play till Sunday, so we watched the first couple games on the first weekend. And even just for the first one, I said, "Man, that actually looks like a real thing," and which was cool to see. So, I don't know. We'll see. More the merrier, I think, for giving guys opportunities. As far as opportunities to coach there, there's other things going on. I can't just. I'm at a different, I'm not at the stage of my career where, just give me something to do for a couple hours a day so I can go play golf. So there's some financial things that may or may not, work out in that capacity. But I don't know. I guess I'm spoiled. I guess it might cause some controversy in it, but to me, there's no comparison in the level of football between the XFL and some of the other things that I've watched. Football's okay, but I just thought the XFL was that next step up of the quality of football. And again, I'm probably biased, and people will probably say you're crazy. It's all the same, but and that was interesting too because the AAF had some rules about defense, could do this, couldn't do this, and the XFL was kicking around a bunch of rules, and that was one of the things that they talked about of adopting those, handcuffs on the defense about not being able to pressure, and they're worried about quarterbacks getting hit and all that stuff. My point, I'm so glad they just decided just to go play and not have any restrictions because, and Bob and I talked about this a lot. So people don't, I know it's kind of an offensive world now, and everybody wants to do everything to score points. However, I do think the viewing public looks at. I mean, there's a reason why nobody really watches the All-Star games. I mean, they might watch it to see a kid, but they're not watching it for the outcome because it's not football. I mean, they know the guys are just going to kind of stand there and play one coverage and one defense. And I think people see that and they instinctively go, "It's not real football. It's not. It's just not the same." Because defenses should be able to defend themselves, and I'm glad they didn't do that. But I don't know. It's good. It'll be interesting to see. I'm really interested to see what the USFL does. Are they going to stay with that hub model like they did in the spring league, or is it going to kind of go back? But I do tend to look at who's attaching themselves to it. I mean, a guy like Doug Flutie comes out and is one of the spokesmen. It's got to be something. I mean, Bob. Why I was surprised initially that because I just knew that Bob had so many offers and opportunities to come out of retirement that he's turned down. I mean, some unbelievable offers that he's turned down. I didn't see that as being the thing for him. And we talked about it, and what sold him on it was the quality of people that were attached to it. Oliver Luck, he would not have done it if it was the old XFL, for example. Where he didn't want to be part of more of a spectacle than a football league. And once he was convinced that it was going to be a football league, then he was all in. And I think he'd be the first to tell you he had a blast doing it.
Well, speaking of Bob Stoops, do you think if The Rock, I would assume he would definitely take the call from if it was The Rock and Danny Garcia. Do you think he would have interest coming back in the XFL in 2023?
I'm not a spokesman, and I don't want to speak off cuff. I've never really asked him a yes or no question about that. However, we've talked enough and quite a bit. It was such a good experience for him. He loved it. He had a blast. We all did. But it was perfect for him because, some of the things that I don't want to say drove him out of the college game, but that he had just kind of had his fill of over a long, illustrious career. They weren't there in the XFL. You didn't have to deal with a lot of the stuff you have to deal with now. And it was perfect for him. So he enjoyed the experience. I'm certain he would listen. Again, would it be the right thing for him at this time? I know he just signed up for that other deal with I think it's a Fox.
Doing game days or something like
game
that.
Days.
Yeah.
But when that happened, people, there goes the Bob in the XFL. Not necessarily. I mean, he flies out. He flies out, does his deal, and flies back. He's still going to see his son play. So that's nothing that's insurmountable. And Bob's just one of those guys. I mean, if it's something he wants to do, he's going to make it happen. He has the wherewithal to do it. So I know he would listen because it was such a good experience for him. He enjoyed it. He of course, we would like to win a couple more games, but
all right.
Aside from that, we still owe those folks a win, man. I feel terrible. We couldn't get good fans. They showed up pretty well for us, and we didn't do so hot for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, we didn't get to see it all come to its conclusion, so who knows what would have happened. So, I guess where can people find you? So now you're coaching in Kansas University. Is that what's?
Yeah, I took. I came here. It was. I don't know, maybe I guess it was late June, so there were a few months had a lot of time to kind of spitball about the XFL after, I think it was mid-April, late April when they finally, dropped the bomb on us. So there's a few months, went for a lot of walks with the wife, kind of thought about life and those things, but they did fine, but as well as they could. I'm not knocking the XFL, for a company pulling the plug on you, did the honorable thing, in my opinion. They're not going to pay the rest of the contract, all that stuff, because it is a bankruptcy case. However, they didn't just pull the plug and say, you're done today, nothing. They tried to, in my opinion, they tried to do what they could to do everything right and do right by people. But, so there was a couple months, and then, the thing that everybody knew was, as a coach, that kind of wasn't in the situation where they could just go, okay, whatever, I'll go back to the golf course. It wasn't exactly fertile hiring season for college football. So everybody kind of knew that. And I was fortunate that the guy that actually, one of the guys that, I don't know if he's the one that replaced me the first time I left, he had a chance. He just wanted to go back. He went he took a high school job in Arkansas. So they had this late opening in the role that I had before. And, they called and yeah, sure. It's the choice is to work or not work. I mean, I'm going to work. I'm not ready to sit around and do nothing. So
yeah.
I did. It's it's an analyst role, which, was good. You feel you have some, you have some input, but again, I'd like to be on the field. I think that's where my strengths are, but it's interesting because I was here with Les Miles. I'm not going to dive into that whole deal. I mean, I was kind of in the middle of all that stuff that went down with Coach, and was fortunate enough when they hired Coach Leipold, the new staff here, to get a chance to stay, which is somewhat unusual, especially after the type of year we didn't have a very good year. But it's funny because our corners coach at Dallas, a guy named Marvin Sanders, is very good friends with Coach Leipold. So there was a little bit of a familiarity there. Because Marvin had called me, this is way before they even offered Coach the job. And he said, yeah, he called and asked about you. So whatever. But they got the right guy here. So it's good to see maybe a different way of doing things. And, a lot of the programs that I've worked at have been rebuilds. So it's always good to see a guy that's, kind of came up the same way like I did. He started D3 guy and moved up. His track record's impeccable. He's got an incredible record, and I've been very impressed with how just in the couple months that he's been here, the changes he's been able to make with our players. He sort of, to me, he really gets it that, your culture in the locker room has got to be right first before you really worry about anything else. And that's what we spent a lot of time working on. So hopefully better things for the Jayhawks. I think they're coming.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, Coach, for stopping by and talking to us about your experience with the XFL, and we'll keep in touch as things move forward. Yeah,
appreciate you, bud. It's always good to talk XFL football. Go Renegades. Raise hell.
There you go. All right, thank you.
I noticed you get that pullover. That's a bad looking pullover. we were getting ready to go hurt on them.
Oh yeah, well they weren't looking too good towards the end.
No, they were
the
okay.
Offense wasn't.
They're okay. They had us a little worried about. I forget his name. They were almost the same situation we were. A little bit in flux at the quarterback.
Yeah.
And they had that guy they brought in. I forget his name.
Well, now he's playing tight end for the Steelers or something like
that.
Yeah. Man,
he's a big joker.
Yeah.
But he had played, I think, the week before, and we were. I wouldn't say worried, but you could tell they were a little bit different with him. Half the battle of quarterback plays. The team either rallies behind you or they don't. That's one of Baker Mayfield's greatest. As good a player as he is, it's his locker room presence, and guys just gravitate to him and rally behind him. And you could tell that cat had a little bit of that. So we had a little bit of trepidation.
Tyree Jackson.
That's him.
Yep.
That's him.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So
cool. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.